Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. A very warm welcome to another weekend packed with lectures under our Weekend with Wisdom segment. And today we have with us Dr. Nori Siva Senani ji, who will be speaking in this weekend 4 sessions. A very comprehensive introduction to the philosophy of Vyakarana Shastra, especially focusing on the Sphotavada. We are very glad to have you on the program, Sivasenani ji, and we look forward to the session. Before I begin, let me start with a small prayer. Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Sarvamangalamangalye Shive Sarvartha Sadike Sharanye Trayambake Gauri Narayani Namostute Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Shri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hare Om. Before I request Dr. Sivasenani to start the session, let me just give a very brief introduction to him. Dr. Nori Siva Senani ji is an MBA from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and he is presently working as a data science manager in Microsoft at Hyderabad. He hails from a traditional observant family, and he has studied Sanskrita formally by taking a sabbatical from his work. He completed his MA in Sanskrit with a gold medal from Osmania University, and then he did his MPhil in translation studies from University of Hyderabad. And during his MPhil, he studied Sanskrit to English translations in Vedanta. His PhD is in the area of philosophy of grammar and Advaita Vedanta. It was completed under the guidance of Mahamahopadhyaya Professor Korada Subramanian ji in 2016. He has studied under Korada Subramanian ji both Vyakarana and Mimamsa as well as Vedanta. And following the footsteps of his teacher and the traditional framework, Sivasenani ji uses a holistic approach to any given issue, applying the concepts from all the Vidyasthanas and not restricting oneself to a field of subject at hand. And this can be seen in all his works, ranging from an estimate of Swati Tirunal to the philosophy of Kalidasa, or to the interaction among Vyakarana and Mimamsa, with the ultimate effect on Vedanta in the examination of a simple Sandhi. His areas of interest are Vedic studies, Vedanta, Vyakarana, Mimamsa, Dharmashastra. He also discovered the Shavara Swami's understanding of sound propagation matches perfectly with a modern scientific description. So again, Sivasenani ji, very warm welcome to you. We are very glad to have you here. Now the floor is open to you. Please go ahead and start the session. Last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we'll take up any questions if any questions comes. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Nitinji, for the glowing introduction. Namaste. Hi. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, go ahead. You can put it in a full screen mode.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to do. Om Namo Brahmadibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartribhyo Om Shirshibhyo Mahabhyo Namo Gurubhyo. I think I'm showing you the wrong screen, excuse me. I'm sorry about that malfunctioning. I had opened some other thing and was sharing. Om Namo Brahmadibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartrubhyo Om Shri Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyah Yenakshara Samamnayam Adhigamya Maheshwarat Kutsam Vyakarana Proktam Tasmai Paninaye Namaha Namaskurve Jagatvandyam Paninyadi Munitrayam Sri Bhartruhari Mukhyamscha Siddhanta Sthapakan Budhan. The way I've organized this entire thing is into 4 sessions, as Nitinji has explained, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. in the morning and 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the evening. Within each session, we will have 2 parts, and each part will last for about 45 minutes. We'll take a 10-minute break between the 2 parts because if you continuously talk for 2 hours or 1.5 hours, the ability to grasp reduces. And at the end, we'll also have time for a 20-minute discussion, right? And the parts that I'll cover are introduced here. We'll start with an introduction and then cover the key aspects of Shabda Brahma Sphota, the discussion amongst Varna, Pada, and Vakya. And then we'll go on to Shabda Purva Yoga, development of Sphotavada, and finally end with relation with other Darsanas in a conclusion. So this is the scheme followed. With that, I'll start with the first one, the first part called Introduction. In this, what I'll cover is Vyakarana as a Vedanga, an overview of Vyakarana Darsana, the key concepts that we need to go forward, namely Shabda Nityatvam, Shabda Artha Sambandha, and a discussion on what is Shabda, and overview of the difference between Bauddhartha and Bahyartha, because these are fundamental aspects which are required going forward. And in every part, there will be an Upasamhara. I am following the old tradition that before we start something, an introduction is given, and we end with a summarization of that, because there's a fairly long one lasting over 8 hours. So each part will be summarized before we end. With that, let me start with the first one, which is that we all know Vyakarana to be a Vedanga. There are these famous karikas from Panniya Siksha. Chandah padau tu vedasya hastau kalpotha patyate jyotisha mayanam chakshur niruktam shrautamuchyate siksha granam tu vedasya mukham vyakaranam smrutam. This should be granam, I think. I'm sorry about this mistake. Tasmat sangam adhityaiva brahma loke mahiyate. The 6 Vedangas are defined as various angas of Veda. The Chandas is the feet, Kalpa is the hands, Jyotish Shastram is the eyes. I see some questions coming up. We'll take it up at the end. Is that okay?
Yes, please, we will take it up at the end, questions. Yeah.
Okay. Niruktam is ears, Siksha is nose, and Vyakaranam is the face or mouth. Right? And therefore, whoever studies the Veda along with 6 Angas, they become famous in Brahmaloka. That is the thing. And this is well known as a Vedanga Vyakarana. Primarily, most people know Vyakarana as a Vedanga. And in the Mahabhashya, we have the Prayojana of Vyakarana, which is Raksha Uha Agama Laghu Asandehaha Prayojanam. Right? That Vyakarana has to be studied for protection. Uha, wherever we need to modify the mantra as needed. And for Agama, because it is simply ordained that we ought to study Vedas for ease of knowing various Shabdas and for unambiguity. When we say protection as needed, right? We also know that we have various Vikriti Pathas, right? Like we have the Krama Samhita Patha, then we have the Krama Patha, Jata Patha, Ghana Patha, etc. In all these, there are various combinations of words, and Vyakarana Sutras will apply there. And in this manner, Raksha is also extended using Vyakarana. Then there are certain Vikruti yagas where Vikrutihi Prakrutivat Kartavya is what Mimamsa says, that with the procedure is given in the Prakriti, but Ritvik or Yajamana has to follow that, modify it in the Vikruti. For such things, we again need Vyakarana Jnana. When it comes to Agama, it is simply said, Brahmanena Nishkarano Dharmaha Shadango Vedaha Adhyayaha Gyeyaha iti. There is no reason why one ought to study the Vedangas or Vedas. Nishkarana. Without any reason, all the three, Dharma, Shadanga and Veda, all this needs to be studied and known by a Brahmana. This is the Agama that we have. In terms of ease of knowing Shabdas, we have this old example that when Brihaspati was teaching Indra, he was teaching all the forms of all the words. Right? Brihaspati was a great teacher, Indra was a great student. He would listen to one thing and remember it forever. Even so, he kept on teaching, Indra kept on listening, and apparently after 1,000 years, not normal human years, but a divine 1,000 years, there was still something to be known. From that time onwards, we have Indra Vyakarana, which is that it is said that Indra said, look, we cannot learn all Shabdas, right? Therefore, there has to be an easy way of knowing, and that's how Vyakarana started becoming more and more concise. That's the idiom that we have about the history of Vyakarana. The point here is, by studying Vyakarana, we can differentiate sadhu and asadhu Shabdas, the entirety of them. How many Shabdas are there? There's only one word, Anantam. Right? I tried to once compute how many will be there, and I came up with a number called some 24 crore Shabdas, and that was with many assumptions. And without any doubt, if we add compound words, we can even generate more Shabdas. That is the generative power of Sanskrit and Sanskrit Vyakarana. But all of this can be known if only one studies Vyakarana simply. We also need knowledge of the Vedanga Vyakarana, because there are many things in Veda where one needs to be very clear. There is action ordained. For example, in one yajna, the Pashu is described as Sthula Prushati. Sthula Prushati can be a Pashu with big marks or a very fat Pashu which is marked. Right? So as to what exactly it is depends on the Swara. And these kind of things are also known from Vyakarana. So these are the traditional definitions and purposes of studying Vyakarana, and this is what is well known. In addition to that, Patanjali also gives 13 ancillary goals, starting with Te Asuraha and Dushta Shabda and so on and so forth. But today this is not very pertinent to us because we are more focused on the Vyakarana Darsana. But all these objectives, uses of Vyakarana remain useful. They sort of are the motive why everybody studies Vyakarana. This is a critical tool for all branches of knowledge. Even when somebody does not study Veda, somebody is only Nayayika, they still have a working knowledge of Vyakarana. Without that, it is not an exaggeration to say that you cannot study any Shastra in Sanskrit without knowing Vyakarana to some extent. Therefore, it is a critical tool for all branches of knowledge, and yet it is also a Darshana. And that part is usually ignored, not known by many. In fact, one question might come up: does Vyakarana need a philosophy? Right? Why can't we simply have Vyakarana as a tool, as a Vedanga? The answer is that use of language presupposes a worldview. If we do not have a worldview, we cannot even use language. Right? So, if we think about it, we start realizing it. Maybe let me start with a few examples. We have this statement called sun rises in the east. All of us use it. I am purposefully giving examples from the modern world so that we can relate to it more easily. Now on the right side, you have a diagram of the Earth's rotation, revolution around the sun. Now, if we see this, every word in this sentence, the sun rises in the east, is problematic. First, we'll start with the definite article, the. Is there only one sun? Isn't sun one amongst many such small stars? Nothing special about the sun. So should we use the definite article the? Should sun be capitalized with a capital S? Right? And does the sun really rise? We all know that it's not the sun which is rising, which is Earth which is rotating, right? And let us examine east. Now, if you look at the revolution diagram, at December solstice, where is east? It is on the left side. That is, if you look from fixed stars, from a reference frame of fixed stars. And in the June solstice, it is on the right side. When it is the March equinox at a different side. So is there really any particular east direction? Does it make sense to talk of east? Yet, this is the most common sentence. Right? So when we are using something like sun rises in the east, there is an implicit compact amongst all speakers, an implicit understanding amongst all speakers that we have different levels of reality. That ultimately, yes, we know, we understand, we accept that the sun does not rise. But we speak relative to our existence. If you wake up early in the morning at around 5:45, you start light, then slowly the upper disk of sun is visible. That's what we call as rise. And the direction where this is happening, we call as east, which is then used in multiple things, which are very useful for us in daily life. When you're doing puja, you face east. Right? When you're going somewhere, the directions are given to you are go north, go south, go east, and so on and so forth. We base ourselves based on this. East is extremely critical for our daily existence. Yet we know that in the ultimate analysis, there might not be anything called east. So this implicit compact is there amongst us that we operate in multiple planes of reality, and for the sake of daily interaction, we play act as if sun rises. Right? So this expansion is what is captured in, somebody calls it theory of language, somebody else calls it philosophy of language, some others will call it philosophy of grammar. But examination of this worldview is what really constitutes the philosophy of language. It's not nearly with this. We have another example. There is a image in the bottom left part. It is a sign. It simply says 100. Now, some people will be confused as to whether it is 100 miles per hour or 100 kilometers per hour. Right? Both are possible. This could be 100 kilometers per hour or 100 miles per hour across the world. That's how it is there. Why do we not even mention the units? Imagine somebody is driving very fast. They don't have time to process everything. The sign has to be as minimal as possible. And depending on the country, if we are in US or UK, this is going to be miles per hour. If you're in Europe, India, etc., it's going to be kilometers per hour. That's understood. Now let us examine the speed limit. Okay, on Earth, they are saying that the law says you cannot travel beyond 100 kilometers per hour. Otherwise, you will get what we call a challan in India, right? A ticket, overspeeding ticket. But if you look at how Earth is rotating, the surface speed, depending on where you are, is of the order of 1,600 kilometers per hour. It is more at equator, it is less near the in the tropical region, and more so in the temperate region, but it's of this order. We cover at the equator 42,000 kilometers in about 24 hours. So now what does the law mean when it says that speed limit is 100 kilometers per hour? It's an implicit understanding. We are supposed to understand 100 means 100 kilometers per hour on the surface of Earth, related to the surface of Earth. But it's not just that we have 1,600. The revolution speed of Earth around Sun is about 1 lakh kilometers per hour. And that's not all. If you take Sun's own motion, it is about 7 lakh kilometers per hour, and so on and so forth. The galaxy itself is moving additionally at about same speed as Sun. We don't consider all of this. We all have a compact, then that when a signboard like this is there, we only refer to the relative speed of the vehicle with respect to what looks as fixed, the surface of Earth at that point in time. Or if we take something else like, smooth as silk, this is the logo of Thai Airways, and they very proudly say they're as smooth as silk. But let us examine, is silk really smooth? What happens if we look at silk under a magnifying glass, under a microscope? We'll see various silk fibers. There'll be, we can see the patterns of weaving there, and we can observe each fiber. Each fiber will consist of, further strands. Up to the nanometer level we can go, and we see that there's a pattern there. It is definitely not smooth. You'll see ridges and troughs there very clearly. But still we say silk is smooth, and somebody proudly says we are as smooth as silk. Again, the compact is that, look, when we talk about normal things, like the table surface is smooth, smoothness is relative and relative to the scale at which we normally operate. So in Sanskrit, we call this not atyanta satya. Right? So every time we use language in very, very ordinary things, if we examine all the assumptions and beneath that, we'll be surprised as to how many assumptions we make, right? So this is what we need to understand, and this is what is captured in the philosophy of language. Now we'll take some traditional examples. There is a pratyaya called san pratyaya in Sanskrit. It is a desiderative. So when we have a usage like pipatishati kulam, kulam is a bank of a river. Pipatishati etymologically means the bank wants to fall, is desirous of falling. Now a question arises, how can a bank desire something? A bank is a jada padartha, right? It is not sentient. Can it have a desire? Can we use something like this? So various things are examined in the tradition of grammar. Katyayana or Vararuchi, the Vartikakara, initially suggests that we can use sun when there is an imminent danger. Okay. Then finally he says, okay, all these are there, but you know what? Let us take a position that sarvasyava chetana vatvat. This is a Vartika on the sutras of Panini. What this means is, Patanjali explains, sarve chetanavat. We simply take everything to be permeated by Chaitanya. And therefore, in our worldview, we will not ask questions. If somebody is saying, hey, when is the bus coming, for example? Now, we cannot be over smart and say, look, bus is an insentient thing. It will not come on its own. It has to be caused to move by an engine which has to be operated by a driver. The Chaitanya resides in the driver, and through him, all the movement is passed on through an engine and so on and so forth, through transmission, whatever. We cannot operate like this on a daily basis, right? So when we talk in English or some other language, we don't even understand that we are assuming insentient objects as if they have Chaitanya. These are the kind of things which are explicitly discussed and stated as the positions, right? And it does not just end here. Let us take another statement that there is a monkey on the tree. Now, you will say, what is great about monkey on the tree? It's a fairly simple sentence, right? But if you ask a Navya Nayayika, he says, why are you so imprecise? The monkey is not on the entire tree and not the entire monkey is on the tree. So he will say that the part of the monkey which is in contact with one branch of the tree is on that part of the branch of the tree which is in contact with that part of the monkey which is in contact with the tree. If you are not following this, believe me, I've made it very, very simple for you. If I say the same thing in Sanskrit, it becomes even more complicated. Essentially, they are saying that the contact between monkey and tree is in a very limited area and we need to delimit that. Okay? And only to that delimited area is the samyoga or the contact valid. It's a very precise use of language. Now, Nayayikas justifiably pride themselves in supplying this beautiful tool of precision to all Shastri. Yet, the Nyaya view presupposes certain things, that the monkey is real, that the branch is real, that the sambandha called samyoga exists. Now, if we further examine that, we will see that there is a kapitva jati in the monkey from a Nyaya point of view. And what is really important here is, up to this point, a Vyakarana also will agree. Oh yes, I agree that there is a kapi and there is a kapitva jati in that. There Nayayika says that's where our analysis ends. Jatau na jatihi. There can be no further jati within this kapi. And then Vyakarana says, no, we don't agree there. Right? We assume that there is one satta, mahasatta, underlying all jatis, and we call it Brahman. This worldview is very different. Nyaya accepts Ishvara, but Ishvara will have nothing to do with this kapitva jati. All these jatis are independent and different. And jati is the lowest analysis item of analysis from a Nyaya point of view. And all these concepts of Nyaya are reflected in the way language is used by a Nayayika. For Nyaya, for example, the karta is the most important one, agent, right? But for Vyakarana, kriya is the most important. In fact, when I teach Sanskrit, the common question now is, what is a sentence? As a thumb rule, I say, okay, whatever contains one verb is a sentence. Well, I'm not saying that this is the final position, but that is large in many sentences. If you actually want to go to what the definition of sentence is, arthaikatvat is what Mimamsa says, and we can give a full definition. But for a beginner, for a learner, when you're teaching grammar, saying that whatever contains one kriya is one sentence is easy because everything else has an anvaya into the kriya. Okay, the karta is the agent of kriya, the doer of kriya. Right? The karma is what is being affected by the kriya. The karana is the instrument with which the kriya is done. You see that all the karakas have they have an anvaya. That means we can map all of them into how the kriya is happening. So the worldview of a grammarian is, it permeates the way a grammarian approaches the world, uses language, analyzes language, explains language. Right? So does Vyakarana need a philosophy? Yes, it does need a philosophy, because though it purpose at the surface it is about raksha, uha, agama, about differentiating sadhu shabdas, asadhu shabdas, since it is one of the three primary shastras which are governing language, it needs to have a worldview. That worldview is what is captured in philosophy of grammar. In fact, this is a karika from Bhartrihari. Yatra drashta cha drushyancha darshanam cha vikalpitam tasyaivarthasya satyatvam shitaha trayanta vedinaha. Those who know Vedanta resort to the truth of such an entity in whom the difference of seer, seen and seeing is not superimposed. This is a position of Vyakarana, that the differentiation into karta, karma and kriya is actually not real. It's only a superimposition. And they are very careful to formulate all rules with this ultimate view in mind. With this, I introduce you to Vyakarana Darsana proper. Some of the things that we'll cover in this section are that Shabda Brahman is the ultimate entity. The world is a vivarta of Shabda. Atman is non-different from Shabda. Everything is permeated by Shabda. And the seen diversity of the world is due to various Shaktis of Brahman. And by knowing Sabda Brahman, one attains union with Brahman. Okay. If you do not have time to listen to anything else, these 6 statements kind of capture the essence of Vyakarana Darsana. As to how each one of them happens, or what exactly the details of each of these, we'll expand in the following sessions. The key tenets of Vyakarana are that the fundamental, foundational positions are that Shabda, Artha and the relationship is Nitya. That Vedas are Apaurusheya, and Veda is the source of knowing the ultimate. That Artha is Bodha, which is conceptual. Some of these things will come across more in more depth as we go forward. I'm just introducing the concepts right now, so that in the spirit of first telling you what I'm going to talk about, then talking about in detail and again summarizing. Another tenet is that Pratibha, an aspect of intellect, has the form of Arthabodha, and this is caused by Abhyas and earlier births. This is innate, right? This is another key concept. And since it's a common tool for all schools, it does not insist on one path, but tries to reconciliate different paths. Let us briefly examine Shabda Nityatvam. Shabda means word normally understood, but again, it is not merely word. My Guruji, Brahmasri Mahamahopadhyaya Korolas Gurunangaru gave 16 definitions of Shabda in his translation of Brahmakanda. Right? Shabda means entire Vangmayam as well, and if you want to really push it, it can mean the entire world, because the position of Vyakarana is that everything is permeated by Shabda. But again, just like smooth, east, etc., there are some conventions. Sometimes it is said that Shabda is limited to word. To that extent, we can maybe use this. Then Artha means meaning. Again, Artha has other meanings, but let us take it as meaning for the purpose of this discussion. And the relationship, if you look at this, what some schools propose is a samaya. Samaya means a niyama or an agreed rule. So what it really means is that this is a tumbler, or this is a phone, etc. Or when we say gauhu, a certain animal comes into view. All of us agree that this should be called cow or gauhu, and that should not be called something else, or gauhu should not mean some other animal or some other entity or some other being, or even a kriya. This common compact or agreement is what is called samaya. So when we look at the relationship between Shabda and Artha, one school says that in the beginning, there was a samaya created between Shabda and Artha. So red never meant what we now know as red, but somebody, Ishvara maybe, said that, okay, from now onwards, red shall mean this color, or phone shall mean this thing, and so on and so forth. There is another school which says, no, that is not right. The relationship between Shabda and Artha is Naisargika. Naisargika is along with creation, okay, from creation, natural. Just when the world was born, at the very same time, Shabda and Artha and the relationship was born. There is no Ishvara or anybody who has made this compact that this Shabda should mean this Artha. Right? These are the two positions we obtain. Some people say that Shabda is not Nitya. Shabdaha, Anityaha, Kotakatvat is what Nyaya would say, and other schools like Sankhya, etc. Whereas Mimamsa, Vedanta, and Vyakarana say, no, Shabda is Nitya. Why do they insist on Shabda being Nitya? Right? It is because all these three schools, they derive their ultimate entity on the strength of Veda. If Vedanta is saying Brahman is the ultimate entity, it is not because any Acharya like Gaudapadacharya or Shankaracharya or Ramanujacharya said Brahman is the ultimate. No. It is mentioned in the Vedas, therefore Brahman is ultimate. And how does Advaita differ from Buddhism? If you look at so many of the other tenets, a lot of commonality is there. The biggest differentiation is that Advaita Vedanta will say, look, the ultimate entity in this world is Brahman. Because the Veda says so and because I have faith in the Veda. Veda is a pramana. For Bauddhas, Veda is not a pramana. Therefore, they have positions like anatta or shunya. But ultimately, if you examine the properties of shunya and Brahman, so many of them are so similar. It is that they have arrived based on their own reasoning at this conceptualization of the world. So the key difference or the key differentiator of these Darsanas, Vedanta, Mimamsa, and Vyakarana, is that their key concept is derived from Veda. You can say, but Nyaya is also an orthodox school, Yoga is an orthodox school, Sankhya is an orthodox school, Vaiseshika is an orthodox school, yes. But their main entities, whether you call it Pradhana in Nyaya and Sankhya and Yoga, or Ishvara in Nyaya and Vaiseshika, they are derived by Anumana. Veda is in that sense a secondary pramana for them. If Veda is not Nitya, they can still kind of make all the other concepts of their school tenable. But if Veda is not Nitya, then Mimamsa, Vyakarana, and Vedanta cannot operate because their key tenets are based on Veda being pramana. And for Veda to be pramana, if somebody made a samaya before Veda was there, then that Veda cannot be apaurishaya. If it is not apaurishaya, it cannot be infallible. If it is not infallible, it cannot be a pramana. There is a strong linkage between Shabda Nityatvam and Veda Pramanya. In fact, Kumarila Bhatta in his Shlokavartikam says, Tasmat Veda Pramanartham Nityatvam iha sadhyate. The position of all these three schools is Shabda is Nitya, Artha is Nitya, and the relationship is Nitya. It is Naisargika. From creation, all these three are there. No, there is nobody who has created these Shabdas, who has created these Arthas, and gave a mapping that this Shabda should mean this Artha. This Shabda Nityatvam is a central tenet of Vyakarana Darsana. And it is required to achieve Veda Pramanya because all three believe that Veda is apaurishaya. Some people can come and say, but sir, there is one school of Vedanta which says that Ishvara Nishvachitam Veda. Yes, Veda is also Ishvara Nishvachita. There we maintain non-difference between Ishvara and Veda. Right? That position is also accepted in Vedanta, but that does not harm their position that Shabda is Nitya. In fact, this is said in so many words in Badarayana Sutras. And irrespective of flavor of Vedanta, that is Advaita, Dvaita, Visishtadvaita, Shuddhadvaita, and any other thing, they all accept that Shabda is Nitya because Vyasa himself has captured it in a sutra. This Shabda Nityatvam then is a critical concept. And once we accept Shabda is Nitya, so many other positions follow as we shall examine going forward. When it comes to the Sambandha between Shabda Artha and Shabda and Artha, Vyakarana starts with the very first Vartika which says Siddhe Shabda Artha Sambandhe the other things are not really relevant to us. What this means is, given that Shabda, Artha and their Sambandha is Nitya, and further we talk about Shastra and Dharma Niyamaha. That means the Vyakarana Shastra is there for the sake of telling us what is Dharma. In this case, Dharma means if you utter a Sadhu Shabda, you get Punya, and if you utter a Asadhu Shabda, you get Papa. Right? So that's the reason why in Indian tradition, an Asadhu Shabda is never ever printed or uttered. Whereas in linguistics, you put a star mark and write the Asadhu Shabda. So you will find grammar to be very funny. If they give counterexamples, things will be very easy. But all the grammarians are Sastras. They cannot get Papa by pronouncing an Asadhu Shabda. Therefore, they never ever give the counterexample. Whereas in grammars of other languages, you will say that this form of the word is correct, this form of the word is not correct, it is corrupt or whatever. But we cannot even, our acharyas cannot even pronounce that because of this particular Dharma Niyama. Anyhow, coming back to Siddhe Shabdartha Sambandhe, what this really means is that the position of Vyakarana is that Shabda is Nitya, Artha is Nitya, and Sambandha is Nitya. Now, why are we looking at it separately? For a moment, think that amongst these three, Shabda, Artha and Shabda Sambandha, one of them is not Nitya. We take only Shabda to be Nitya, right? And Artha is taken to be something which is created later. Now what happens? There is a moment when only Shabda is there and Artha is not there, right? Then where can the mapping come? And what will be the meaning of that Shabda? And what is the purpose of that Shabda? And what does that Shabda denote? Or if we take that, okay, initially only the world was there, no Shabda was there, like we take the Darwinian view, right? That there were monkeys earlier, we have Arthas like trees and all, but there was no Shabda called Vruksha, okay? Then very clearly Shabda is made, therefore it is not Nitya. If Shabda is not Nitya, Veda cannot be a Pramana. Then your entire edifice breaks down because your foundations have collapsed. In this sense, it is a logical necessity for all the three to be Nitya if one of them is Nitya. And this has to be Nitya for our Shastra to what we call to pravartate. That means for the Shastra to work, for the Shastra to operate. That being the position, now just for a second imagine how can Artha be Nitya? We just said, right, the tree is an Artha. Can a tree be Nitya? If you think about it, we will think that tree cannot be Nitya. Those who have knowledge of other Shastras will say, no, it's a very easy puzzle to solve. Tree, there are two kinds of trees. There is the Vruksha Vyakti and the Vruksha Jati, right? That means there is a class or a universal of trees and there is the particular individual of this class. These are called classes or sometimes categories in ancient Greek thought. But what it means is that the Vrukshatva Jati is Nitya. Nothing is happening to the Jati, right? But only the Vyakti, sometimes it will manifest, sometimes it will die, a new tree is born, it goes on and so forth. But what we see changes are only in the Vyakti, but there is no decay, there is no death or birth to the Jati. This is the classical Mimamsa stance. So, Artha can be Nitya in that sense. For this stance to be valid, you need to have two particular views, which is that all these things are real and there are a multitude different from each other. But when the Vedanta is saying that, look, this entire world was created by Brahman, this entire world is permeated by Brahman, this plurality of arthas in the ultimate analysis cannot be sustained. Therefore, if we focus more and more on how and why Artha is Nitya, we will realize that each Jati has an underneath entity beneath it, which is Brahman. And because Brahman is Nitya, only on that basis Artha can be Nitya. This is how we see that each of these fundamental concepts directly leads to some of the well-known positions of each Shastra. And Shabda Nityatva also means Artha Nityatva. Artha Nityatva also means that Jagat is Brahman and that it is really a vivarta of it. We'll see those concepts further. So we'll end this segment with just a definition of sound. Okay. I think we're already near the 45-minute mark. Shabda is not sound. Sound as we understand it. In fact, Sabaraswamy goes to a great extent to discuss the physics of sound, just to tell everybody that, look, I'm not ignorant of what actually sound is. I have thoroughly analyzed it. He has given the physics of sound propagation some 2000 years back. But in our Shastra, Shabda is something other than sound. So since we are discussing Vyakarana, we'll take the Vyakarana definition where Patanjali says, Yeno charitena sasna langula kapuda khura vishaninam sampratyayo bhavati shabdaha. What is this? Sasna, langula, etc. These are all the parts of a cow. Okay? Shabda is that upon uttering which the knowledge of the entity which has a dewlap, tail, etc. occurs. That means we are talking about Gau Shabda. When you say Gauhu, Shabda is that entity, right? Which when it is manifest, when it is uttered, all of us get the pratyaya or the knowledge or cognizance of the entity called cow, which has a tail, dewlap, etc. That means for all the three schools, Vedanta, Mimamsa, and Vyakarana, Shabda is a concept which exists eternally and it is manifest when it is uttered. Whereas Nayayika will say that Shabda is only what that you have uttered. Nirukta will operate with both definitions. But these three Shastras are very clear. Shabda is an eternal concept. And this eternal concept is what is called Brahman by Vyakaranists. One more thing that we can cover now or later is about Bauddhartha versus Bahyartha. We talked about Artha being an entity, right? Now, this Artha can be in our Buddhi or it can be Bahi, that is outside. So, if we take Ghataha Asti, there is a pot. The question arises, where is the pot? For a Nayayika, for a Mimamsaka, pot is there in the world that you can see, right? So, there are some discussions about what happens about Abhava, Ghato Nasti. Then, how are you saying that something which is not there, how do you can even, conceive it, etc., etc. There are workarounds as to how that is defined. But for a Vedanti and a Vyakarana, not a Mimamsaka, the pot exists primarily in your Buddhi. They are supremely unbothered about the actual existence of a pot outside. It could be there, it need not be there, it might not be there, but pot always exists in your Buddhi, and it is always the Buddhista pot that is referred to by the Shabda called Ghata. So Shabda is an eternal concept which becomes manifest when pronounced, and Artha is a concept, right, which can coincide with what is being seen outside. Think of it differently. When we say Gauhu, we can understand the animal cow, right? Or we can understand the image of a cow, right? Or there is a Pishtamahi Gauhu, the Akriti of the shape of a cow is understood, and so on and so forth. It's not that all these need to exist. We can easily deal with a conceptual meaning, and we do it all the time. In modern linguistics, there's a famous example called the 825 Geneva to Paris train. So there's a man called Ferdinand de Saussure. He's called the father of modern linguistics, and he gave a general course in, I think it's called General Course in Linguistics, if I'm not wrong. There he gives an example that he says the sign and the signified, they are very different. The 825 Geneva Paris train is only a sign. Those of you who know about trains, you know that there are multiple rakes operating as the same train. That means if you take Godavari Express from Hyderabad to Visakhapatnam, there is one rake which travels on a given day from Hyderabad or Secunderabad towards Visakhapatnam. At about the same time, another train is traveling from Visakhapatnam towards Secunderabad. Both are Godavari Express. They are given different names, right? Sometimes it is possible that they take another rake, maybe Golconda or maybe Krishna, whatever it is there, change the board and say, for today, this is Godavari Express. Right? The same used to happen with Geneva Paris train. There were multiple rakes. This is a modern image that I have shown here. And Saussure was teaching, it was more like a steam locomotive, or I don't know whether diesel locomotive was there or not. Diesel was just about invented, or oil was drilled in Dibrugarh about 15-20 years back before Saussure was teaching. So most likely it was a steam locomotive. But the concept remains the same, that multiple rakes are operated under the same name. The sign, the Shabda, Geneva Paris train or 825 train is very, very distinct it can mean multiple arthas, and those multiple arthas need not even be a train. So apparently what happened, once the train was cancelled, there were a few passengers, they were taken there in a bus. So for that day, the bus was the train. It looks like we are doing violence to the concept of train, right? A train is to be supposed to be a series of vehicles connected to each other. That is the etymological meaning of train. But it was a bus, it's a single carriage. It doesn't matter, because the Geneva-Paris train is a concept. Sometimes the external object will match with it totally, sometimes it will not match, sometimes the external concept will not even exist. Now, you will say that how can it be possible for the external concept not to exist for the Shabda to continue to have meaning? In Hyderabad, we have an area called Liberty. Okay, it is near Himayat Nagar, between Himayat Nagar and Hussain Sagar. Now, when you look at why is this area called Liberty, is there a Statue of Liberty there? No, there is no Statue of Liberty there. Why is it called Liberty? People who are born maybe after 1980 might find it very difficult to even figure out why it is called Liberty. It is called Liberty because once upon a time there was a cinema there called Liberty, Liberty Talkies or whatever. After that, that was raised to ground. In its place, some TTD thing came up, or some initially things, Sanskrit Vidyalaya was there, and all that. Today, there is no Liberty cinema there. There is no Liberty Talkies there. The Liberty Talkies is long gone, at least 50 years it is gone. But when Liberty cinema was there, that entire area used to be called Liberty. We still have such areas named after cinemas in Hyderabad continuing. For example, we have something called Dilshad Talkies in Koti area. And these things happen. And even long after Liberty was demolished, that area continues to be called as Liberty. So is Liberty there outside? It is not there. But are we not operating? We are operating. So this is what we mean by Bodhartha, a conceptual meaning. Liberty need not refer to any physical entity which is there outside, either a statue or a cinema or whatever. It's just a concept, and we are happy to work with these concepts. So this is the meaning of Bodhartha and Bahyartha. With these fundamental building blocks, in the next few parts, we will examine the rest of the Shastra. I'll take a pause by doing Upasamhara. We've seen that Vyakarana is a Vedanga and a Darshana. Usage of language implies an underlying philosophy, whether we are conscious of it, whether we specifically explicitly state it or not. Shabda Brahman, the same as Atman, is the ultimate entity according to Vyakaranas. The world is a vivarta of such Shabda or Brahman, and Mukti or Moksha is a liberation, or liberation is union with the such Brahman. Shabda is Nitya, Artha is Nitya, their Sambandha is Nitya. Only when all these are there can Veda be accepted as a Pramana. And Shabda is definitely not sound for Vyakaranas and Vedantins, but not Mimamsakas. Artha is Bauddha, which is conceptual. With this, I pause. I see that we have covered 50 minutes. 5 minutes we have overshot. There is a question from Mr. Subhash Yadav. Is grammar the right word for Vyakarana, or should we have some other English word for Vyakarana? A great answer, great question, sir. Vyakarana covers grammar and linguistics and a bit more, like I just showed, right? So if you want to really get an equivalent in English, grammar ought to be, Vyakarana ought to be grammar plus linguistics plus philosophy. Now that will become difficult to operate. So just like we say sun rises in the east or silk is smooth, we continue to use the word grammar for Vyakarana, but there is no Atyantika Satyatvam there. I mean, there is not ultimate truth there. Just like we say that Shabda is word, not fully true, but in some cases it can be true. But I mean, we have the influence of Navya and Janjayikas who say that a monkey is on a tree is a very, very imprecise statement. From such a point of view, yes, grammar is not the right word for Vyakarana. But conventionally we keep using it. But that does not mean that we equate Vyakarana as encompassing only grammar. If you really want a full meaning, as I said, it should be grammar plus linguistics plus philosophy. Anyway, with this, we'll take a pause. The time now is 11:52. We'll come back at 12:02. I hope that is agreeable. With that, I'm stopping my video and going on mute.
Yes, Sivasenani. Yeah, we'll come back at 12:02. Yeah. Sivasenani, you have to unmute yourself.
No, I didn't yet start. I'm just preparing. That's all.
Okay, yeah.
I'll wait another minute for people to come back.
Yeah, they might be already here.
Okay, still we'll start in 1 minute. Those who are present, let's just wait.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Let us start. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. So in first part of this session, we just covered the introduction where we looked at Vyakarana as a Vedanga and as a Darshana, and covered the key concepts of Shabda Nityatvam, the relationship among Shabda and Artha. We looked at what is Shabda, that it is a conceptual entity, and we also differentiated Bauddha Artha versus Bahya Artha. We kept on repeating in that session that the ultimate entity is Shabda Brahman. In this part, we will examine the concept of Shabda Brahman in some detail. The highest principle is Brahman, and it is identified with Shabda. This is really a summary of the various positions of Vakyapadiya. And before I maybe continue, I'll give a brief introduction about what Vakyapadiya is. We'll cover this in more detail in, I think, part 7 or part 6. But the darshan of Vyakarana developed with Panini writing the Ashtadhyayi. Ashtadhyayi is understood by many as containing only the Prakriya Bhaga or the Vedanga part, but it also has the philosophy part embedded in it. This has been brought out to with great clarity by Patanjali in his Mahabhashya. Mahabhashya is a commentary on the Vartikas on Ashtadhyayi. It also covers Ashtadhyayi, but primarily the Vartikas are its points of discussion. So it's kind of a partial commentary on the Ashtadhyayi. Not all the sutras are covered in Mahabhashya. But Mahabhashya very clearly brings out the Arthika Bhaga or the philosophy of Vyakarana in great detail. But it is interspersed with the Prakriya Bhaga, where discussion of words happens. So there are comments here and there, etc. What Bhartrhari has done is, he has given us a very systematic exposition of all these concepts in a book called Vakyapadiyam. Vakyapadiyam has 3 kandas, Brahmakanda, Vakyakanda and Padakanda. Brahmakanda deals with Brahman, and whatever I'm giving here references are from Vakyapadiyam. 1.1 means the first karika of Vakyakanda. Now, whether the Bhartrhari is the same Bhartrhari who wrote Subhashitas, some people say yes, some people say no. But more people seem to know Bhartrhari, the Subhashitakara, than Bhartrhari, the author of Vakyapadiya. Know him to be one of the first Vedantins who was clearly exposed, given a very clear exposition of the systematic exposition of the philosophy of grammar. Bhartrhari is also known to have written a Deepika on the Mahabhashya, but we have the Deepika only on the first 7 Anikas, but not all the 85 Anikas. So this is about Vakyapadiya, from where we are extracting a lot of text. So I'm just giving a gist of what Shabda Brahman is here in this slide, and going forward we'll examine each in great detail. The highest principle is Brahman, which is identified with Shabda. Brahman is one, without beginning, without end, has Shabda as its essence and is imperishable. The Brahman has many Shaktis and is not different from his Shaktis. Brahman is seen to have various states like birth, etc., due to its Kala Shakti. This world is a transformation of Brahman. Veda is a reflection of Brahman. This is what is covered in the first 5 karikas. Later it is said Brahman is real, Satya, pure, Vishuddha. of the nature of knowledge alone, Vidyaika Padagama, and is in the form of Pranava, that is Omkara. Brahman is alone, Kevala, is the source of Vedas and has Veda as its body. Brahman is beyond difference of forms and actions and is pure illumination, Prakasha, beyond Vidya and Avidya. Brahman is described as Mahasatta, the Jati amongst Jatis, and that which is seen as many Jatis when associated with Upadhis or adjuncts. Brahman is the Dravya that is denoted by all Shabdas. So this is the summary of what Brahman or Shabda Brahman means to Bhartrihari and Vyakarana. The karikas that we have just explained are here. Anadi Nidanam Brahma Shabda Tattvam Nidaksharam Vivartate Artha Bhavena Prakriya Jagato Yataha. This Brahman is Anadi Nidhanam, without Adi and without Nidhanam, without birth or death. Shabda Tattvam, the Tattvam of Brahma is of Shabda. Yadaksharam, Aksharam is without decay. There is no change in this Brahman. Vivartate Artha Bhavena Prakriya Jagato Yataha. Yataha, from where this Prakriya Jagat, or Jagataha Prakriya, I should say. Jagataha Prakriya is the entire working of the world, right? Is Vivartate, is kind of manifesting or transforming or apparently transforming. Artha Bhavena. Here Artha means all these things we discussed earlier. Pot, tree, man, monkey, etc. All these are Artha. And this, from this Brahman only, entire operations of this world are apparently transforming themselves. That means this entire world is getting created from Brahman, and it is really a transformation of this Brahman. This is how Bhartrihari starts his Brahmakandam and Vakyapadiyam itself. And the rest of the things are what I was just covering in the earlier slide. Ekameva idamnatam bhinnam shakti vyapashraya. It is one Brahman which is said to be different, and so on and so forth. I don't know the grounding of the audience in Sanskrit, therefore I stick largely to English and giving these karikas wherever they are important. But I don't want to really explain the karikas word by word. This is the gist of karikas, 14 and 17, 14 to 17, which is that Vyakarana leads to moksha. This Vyakarana is the doorway to apavarga or liberation. It's a cure for defects in language, the purest of all vidyas, and shines as the basis of all vidyas. Just like Artha Jatis depend on Shabda Jatis, all vidyas depend on this Vyakarana. It is the first rung on the ladder to Siddhi and the straight highway to liberation. So whichever Siddhi one wants, the first step on the ladder is Vyakarana. And it is the Ajihma Rajapadhatihi, the straight way to highway to liberation. The one who has perfected Vyakarana and has through that understood the purport of Vedas is called a Chandasyaha. He sees the highest principle Brahman or Paravak, which is the source of Vedas, has Veda as its body, and which is Kevala alone. Of course, these are only pratignyas, but we should see them as the positions derived from Veda and the Smriti. Here, Vyakarana itself is Smriti as far as Bhartrihari is concerned. These are the distilled positions. And these are the karikas from which we have taken this and have summarized some of them. I'll also summarize another set of karikas just to give this understanding of the nature of Brahman according to Vyakarana. Vyakarana is the highest form of the undifferentiated speech. We'll see that speech itself is seen as having multiple parts, and that the Paravak we talked about earlier, that is what this Vyakarana is. This Shastra is actually, whose form of pure illumination seems to have manifested in several forms in this darkness called Vaikhari. Vaikhari is the lowest form of the speech, the fourth one, and that pure illumination at the highest level of Paravak has manifested in several forms. There Vaikhari is now called darkness because it's very limited. When we say Gauhu, that Gauhu applies to only one entity and so on, whereas Gauhu really means in the undifferentiated form Brahman itself. Vyakarana teaches Spota, which is worshipped as being beyond the differences caused by space and time in Vaikhari, and which is in the form of pure illumination, beyond the light and darkness that Prakrita and Vaikruta Dhvanis are. Again, Prakrita, Vaikruta Dhvanis are described later in the Shastra, but we are really talking about Spota, why this is called Sphotavada, etc. So all these from Madhyama onwards can be called Spota. Usually, if there is no other definition, the Madhyama Sthiti is what is called Spota, in which the signs of the Prakrita Dhvani like Ka, Ga, etc., they shine like reflections due to close association. What Bhartrhari is saying here is, what we see as varnas, right? They're really just reflections within the vast entity called Sphota or Paravak. In Advaita, we talk about Ghatakasha. That Akasha is infinite, and when there is a Upadhi, there is an adjunct like a Ghata. The space within Ghata is called Ghatakasha. And there's also another analogy in Vedanta where we say that Bimba Pratibimba that Brahman is reflected within this Jiva. So here we have kind of both of them put together as reflections due to close association, right? They're very close to it. We find this in Sankhya as well, where a crystal is seen to be rose in color because of closeness with rose. And that's how in Purusha also, though he is Gunatita, the gunas are seen to be within Purusha. Both of them can be valid ways of thinking here, though the reflection part is what is really coming out here, saying that Ka is nothing but a very delimited part, a very limited part of this Ananta Shabda, right? And only that reflection we see. We have the same red color seen crystal due to proximity of gem, the same example as in Sankhya. These Shastras kind of sutras developed about the same time, therefore this is not really a big surprise. In these various letters and swaras of the four Vedas, they seem to exist with distinct identities, but all these are not really different. They are just divided into many by different prakriyas, right? If we understand that all of them means only one, by mastering such a Shastra, one attains Brahman. This is also the kind of explanation of Shabda Purva Yoga, which will take in greater detail in a later session. But this is how the Mukti Marga is there, right? So what we have seen here is that Brahman is the ultimate entity, that this Shastra is the one which leads to moksha, and this is the process through which we go to moksha, wherein we start seeing unity in what is apparently different, right? But the focus clearly is on Shabdas here. Having said that, later in the Padakanda, Bhartrhari takes up the discussion about Brahman as Mahasatta. Entire Brahmakanda is about Brahman. I'm not summarizing all of that here because we want it to be more of a philosophical discussion or a philosophical lecture. These are the parts which are relevant from a philosophy point of view, at least that we get initially introduced. At a different stage, we talked about Jati earlier. And we said that Nyaya and Vaiseshika do not accept Jati within Jati. Even Mimamsa does not accept. The very concept of Jati is that it is that universal which cannot be further divided and which permeates all the individuals of that class. Right? But Vedanta and Vyakarana accept that within Jatis there is another Jati called the Mahasatta. Right? Vedanta does not use the word Mahasatta, but it talks about when Agnitvam goes away from Agni, what remains is Brahman. This is the Brodharanyaka Shruti. Brahman Vyakarana is defined as the Mahasatta, the Jati amongst Jatis, and that which is seen as many Jatis when associated with adjuncts. Right? The Karikas are given here. Satta itself is being divided due to the difference in the limiting adjuncts, the Upadhis, into cow, etc., and is being called as Jati. All the words are within that Satta. That Satta is called the meaning of the Pratipadika and the Dhatu. That Satta is eternal. That is the great Atman. And that is what is expressed by affixes Tva, Tal, etc. This Tvataladaya, what we mean by Tvataladaya affixes is, when you talk about Vriksha, for example, I said Vrikshatva Jati. Right? Vrikshatva is the nature of Vriksha, the treeness or treehood. Nest and hood are the equivalent in English for Tva and Tal. So we can use both words, Vrikshata and Vrikshatva. Both of them mean treeness or treehood. Right? So when we apply Tva to anything, Tat-Tva, Tattva, the nature of that, Brahman, right? So we talk about Pradhanata, right? The nature of being important, and so on and so forth. When we look at the essence of anything, these two affixes and other affixes are also there, they are used. What Bhartrhari is saying is that whenever we use these affixes, we do not refer to cowness or treeness or potness. but we actually refer to Brahman. That means if we have Agni, in Agni we have Agnitvam with a Tva Prachaya, right? But that Agnitvam also has support. That Agnitvam exists because at some point there was only Brahman, and that Brahman became many. One of the many is this Agnitvam. So ultimately this Agnitvam also is nothing but Brahman. I purposefully took this example because, as I said in the Brihadaranyaka Shruti, it is said, when Agnitvam goes away from Agni, what is there? What is there? Brahman is there. That is the substratum, that is the basis, the Turiya, on which every other state exists. This is called Mahasatta in Vyakarana, and this is how it differs from Mimamsa, Nyaya, etc., where Jati within Jati is not accepted, but both Vedanta and Vyakarana cannot accept any entity other than Brahman as the ultimate reality. So a Jati in that sense is a contradiction for them, and therefore Jati has to be either Paryaya or a slightly higher level reality which is based on Brahman. Then if you go to Brahman and Dravya Samuddesha, it's completely philosophical. I could give all the karikas, but I've taken a few of them to clearly, which really expose the thinking of or give what really Brahman means according to the Vyakaranas. The very first karika says the words Atma, Vastu, Svabhavaha, Shariram, Tattvam are all synonyms for Dravya, which is said to be eternal. We should understand that Dravya itself is Brahman here. That means in Vyakarana Darsana, Brahman means Atma. When we say Vastu, Vastu is what is there, right? The thing. That one thing is Brahman, the Dravya. The Svabhava, nature, what we talked about earlier in Jati. Shariram, the body of it, or the Tattvam, that essence. All of these are synonyms for Dravya, and all this is eternal. The true entity, that is Brahman, is determined by the unreal ones which have a similar form. Truth alone is denoted by Shabdas which have unreal adjuncts. The funny thing about language is that we'll later see that there is no ultimate reality associated with varnas or padas or sentences. These are all artificial divisions within this undivided whole called Sphota or Vak. But we have only this as our tool. We have to reach Brahman using this tool. That's the reason why he is saying the true entity Brahman is determined by these unreal ones, which have a similar form. Okay, but in the ultimate analysis, it is actually Brahman which is denoted. So it's like, in the beginning we say that, okay, there are different words. Each of these words means these different things. We talked about earlier thing, right? What is the meaning of Artha being Nitya? We have to imagine a state where Artha is also undifferentiated, where Shabda is also undifferentiated. Therefore, they are really one. From that, all this differentiation it kept on happening. And today we are at a level where this Shabda Rashi we divide into so many words. In a dictionary, there are 6 lakh words, for example. So we have 6 lakh words, and all the 6 lakh words mean so many lakh things. And we are saying this entire class of Artha is also divided, and there's a mapping. That mapping is what we call dictionary, right? There are also other mappings through Abhida. Dictionary only gives you Abhida, but you have other senses denoted by Lakshana and Vyanya and so on. So whatever those are, all those are Sambandhas, right? All this is a kind of multiplication, later manifestation, right? But if we start from here, we slowly go towards the particular, the apex of the pyramid if you're going up, or the base of that, when we take away all those differences. That's what is meant by these unreal upadhis or adjuncts. The tradition received from elders is that there is no difference between tattva and atattva. The eternal tattva itself is thought of as atattva due to improper consideration. The point of all Advaitins, non-dualists, is that there can be nothing different from Brahman. Therefore, when somebody talks about Chaitanya Padartha and Jada Padartha, let's say, right, that this is sentient, this is insentient. If we have a differentiation, and if these two are different entities, you have Advaita, right? But if you are a non-dualist, your position has to be that both what you see as sentient and what you see as insentient has to be the same entity. Right? That's why the Upanishad says, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. All this is Brahman. Right? Within that, you cannot say that this is Tattva, this is Atattva. But yes, in the realm of reality, some people say that this is insentient, this is Jayapadartha. Right? Because of improper consideration, this is really avidya we're talking about here. It's because of avidya that we think some things are not Brahman. But actually, the tradition of Veda and Vedanta is that there is nothing called Atattva. Everything is Tattva only. And this undifferentiated Tattva, that means when it is not divided into Tattva, Tattva, it obtains differentiation. That differentiation is based on time, past, present, future. Okay, but it is said later that this time itself is not real. However, within this Tattva, we cognize or we perceive differences based in this Tattva only, in this Brahman only, differences based on time. That means at some point I was a very young boy, I was an infant, then a boy, then a young man, then a middle-aged man, I'll be a very old man going forward, I'll be dead one day, I'll be born again maybe, right? But if I think that the entity which was there in earlier Janma was different, the entity which is there in later Janma is different, or some other person other than me is different, that is really my avidya. Because the undifferentiated Tattva is one alone, and this undifferentiated Tattva is what is taking all these forms, either in time or in space. In space means in the present time only we have differences, right? We'll also come to space later, but the difference in time itself is unreal, but it is cognized as such. This is due to the Kala Shakti of Brahman. So, when all the forms are withdrawn, what remains is truth, which is eternal, right? And this is what is denoted by Shabda. And this is non-different from the nature of Shabda. From the nature of Shabda, this Brahman is nothing but Shabda. This, in fact, is the sadhana of Vyakarana Darsana as well. The sadhana here is to understand that the seen variety in the world is an apparent manifestation of Brahman. And if we focus on each of these forms, we'll ultimately be able to realize it is nothing but Brahman. And through this withdrawal, right, of the Nama and Rupa, we come to the underlying entity. And that's when we understand and realize Brahman. Okay. And it is now further described as Brahman neither exists nor does it not exist. It is neither one nor is it different. It is neither commingled nor in a separate state. Neither is it modified nor is it other than modified. Each of these positions can be taken and argued. You can say, what is this thing that you are saying, Brahman does not exist, right? But we say it is an existing thing, right? So here we are really talking about what is the meaning of exist, right? Does exist imply that there is also something called non-existence? If it implies something called non-existence, then we cannot admit Brahman to be existing, because Brahman always is. This is really a play on language. And we are not saying that Brahman is a fictional entity. No. It is about the meaning of exist. Remember, we are talking within the realm of Vyakarana, the masters of language. Elsewhere, we see the word exist. For example, in Brahma Sutras, Siddha Vastu is called. Brahma is called a Vastu, which is there, right? Or Vastava, factually existing. It is assumed we know what is the meaning of existing. Here, that itself is being questioned. When we say Brahman neither exists, what we are actually saying is that please look at the word exist. Okay? That itself is problematic, and that's the reason why we are saying that Brahman cannot be limited by such a limited action. Exist is a limited verb and Brahman is unlimited. Therefore, we cannot say that the only thing Brahman does is exist. Similarly, we cannot say that it does not exist. Okay? Why are we saying it is not one? Okay, we are saying that Brahman is one, right? Again, the emphasis is on understanding of one, not on Brahman, right? When we say Brahman is one, there is an implicit statement that there is an entity other than one, or it's possible to have anything which is not one. But The question of one does not even arise when there is only one. That's how we say that it is neither one nor is it different, and so on and so forth. It further continues, Brahman is not and yet it is known. It is one and yet many. It is commingled and yet in separate forms. It is a modification and yet unmodified. What it really means is that when we say Brahman is not, it is really saying that we are unable to grasp Brahman within the limited tools we have. In fact, Veda itself says, Yato va imani one second. Oh no, that's a separate word. We are talking about Brahman being beyond Manas and Vak, right? I was talking about the Janmadi Shruti, therefore I got confused. It says that Aprapya Manasasaha, right? Vak Nivartante Manasasaha, right? It comes back, unable to obtain Brahman. That's the reason we are saying that it is not because we are not able to grasp it, that's all. It's not saying that Brahman does not actually exist. It is known at a Vyavaharika level, though actually Brahman cannot be known because the tools we have are not sufficient to perceive Brahman. We can only become that. Because again, the Triputi also completely dissolves of the Jnata, Jnaya and the Jnana. That's the reason why we say that he's saying is Brahman is not. Right? At a Vyavaharika level, it is known, it is many, and it is separate forms. Actually, when it is really homogeneous. All the three, Shabda, Artha and Shabdartha Sambandha, are being seen as the forms of that Brahman which is one. Okay, that Brahman itself is Drishya, seeing, Darshana, the act of seeing, and also Drashta, the purpose of seeing. Right? We have classic examples we see in Vedanta also here. Just as gold is a truth that remains in earring, etc., and all modifications are removed in a similar way, and all modifications are removed, that truth which remains is said to be Para Prakriti. Right? In all Namarupas, when we remove that Namarupa, what remains is that Murtika eva Satyam, we say that. Similarly, gold alone remains. That entity which remains in all Jatis, in all Dravyas, in all Sattas, that is what is Brahman. Right? That Para Prakriti is the denotation of all Shabdas. And Shabdas themselves are not different from that. Right? Though these two are Shabda and Dravya are non-different, it appears as if the relation is like the relation between those which are not identical with each other. See, we talked about Shabda and Artha, right? Some people can say that, okay, there's a word called Brahman, there's an entity called Brahman, and they're different. No, they're not like that. It just seems like that because without this differentiation, we cannot operate. We cannot even talk about it. Just like the one consciousness which takes mutually opposed forms of self and other, dear and hated, speaker and spoken, and purpose. In a similar way, opposite forms of birth, etc., obtain in a tattva, which is without birth, eternal, and is devoid of prior and posterior. We're talking about bhava vikaras here. In Nirukta, it is said that everybody goes through these 6 stages, jayate, vardhate, etc. Right? One is born, one grows, one decays, and so on and so forth. Right? To explain that, first, the example of consciousness is being taken here. Where is that? We have some people who are dear to us, some whom we hate. But think about it. Both the dear and the hated, they are nothing but Brahman. Right? Similarly, we speak about something, I'm speaking about a subject now with a particular purpose. I am the speaker. But if you really look at it, all the three are the same. So this differentiation in space, we are able to understand, it is apparent. What Bhartrhari is asking us here is also know the differentiation in time of things like birth, etc. It is also equally illusory as this spatial differentiation is. Right? So these are some of the descriptions of Brahman in Vyakarana. I'll take a pause here. Many of you might feel that, look, this is sounding like Vedanta. The reason why I didn't say it is so and I tried to use only translations is to again reassure you that this is what Bhartrhari writes. And by many accounts, he wrote before Shankara. Some people think that Shankaracharya is much before Buddha or around that time. In such a reckoning, Bharsara will be after Shankaracharya, but for those who hold that Shankaracharya was somewhere in 7th century around that time, Bharsara is earlier than that. All this was written much before Shankaracharya and Gaudapadacharya for those who believe that Shankaracharya is in the 7th century. But you'll see that there's a lot of similarity when it comes to Brahman, but it is not exactly same as Vedanta. We'll see that when we look at the Shaktis of Brahman, right? In the very second Karika, we talked about Shaktis. There are many Shaktis that Brahman has. To this point, everybody will also agree. The most important Shakti is Kala Shakti. Then there is Dik. Dik is direction or space, Kriya, etc. All these are Shaktis of Brahman. At a different level, if you see, we have the Karaka Siddhanta in grammar. That means there are 6 Karakas and 1 Sambandha. The Kartru Karakam, the Karma Karakam, Karna Karakam, Sampradana Karakam, Apadana Karakam, and Adhikarana. Right? That means for any action, there is an agent, there is an object, there is an instrument, there is a beneficiary, there is a source from the action gets separated, and there is a location of the action. Right? These are called the Karakas. These Karakas are also Shaktis. Right? It is the same entity which acts in different forms. So Bharsara gives the example of a pot. See, when we say Ghataha Asti, the Kartru Shakti of Ghata is what is being intended here. That is, Ghata is now the agent of existence. Ghataha Asti. But when we say Ghatam Anaya, bring the pot, Ghata becomes the karma. Then the karma Shakti is what is pratita, or what is being illuminated here. That means in the same Ghata, in the same pot, there is the capacity to be an agent, there is a capacity to be an object, and there is a capacity to be an instrument. Ghatena jalamanaya. With Ghata, bring the water. Right? We cannot bring water only in Anjali, right? You take a Ghata and get water. Right? So then there is a separate capacity of this Ghata to be an instrument. If a simple Ghata can have so many Shaktis, and we can refer to each Shakti in each of our sentences, we have to think now Brahman has a much, what we call superior entity, having all these Shaktis, and in fact Karaka is also called as a Shakti at some level. Right? And all these Shaktis are positive. Right? This is a feature of the position of Vyakarana. Yet these Shaktis are the same as Brahman. Why do we say Shaktis are the same as Brahman? The position is that when there are Avayavas, the intent, Vivaksha of the Vakta can be to refer to them separately. Okay? If the intention is to refer to them separately, we talk about Raho Ho Shiraha, the head of Rahu. But some people say, what is this nonsense? Rahu is nothing but there was one Rakshasa. He was cut off. The head is called Rahu and the body is called Ketu. Right? It talks about, or we talk about my right arm. Now, is my right arm different from me? If the Vakta wants it to be different, we can understand it is different. Remember, now we are going back to the compact of sun is rising in the east or silk is smooth, right? Or speed limit is 100 kilometers per hour. You don't have to be very pedantic and specify everything. It is understood by both the speaker and the listener that when I say it is my arm, I am intending to differentiate my arm from this because maybe I think my arm got hurt, right? For example. Therefore, I can't do something like typing it. I could have also said I got hurt, but if I say I got hurt, then immediately my intent is not clear. So what if you got hurt? What is your problem? I got hurt in my finger, therefore I cannot type. Oh, then you understand. To make it very specific, I might say that I hurt my arm or my fingers are hurt. They are cut. It doesn't mean just because I refer to my fingers that these fingers are not me. Similarly, Shakti, sometimes we treat them as separately from Brahman, but it never means that they are different from Brahman. They are the same as Brahman. So Vyakarana is full of these kind of positions where Vivaksha plays a big role, for example. And Vyakarana is comfortable with this multiple and simultaneous existence of different paradigms because it simply recognizes that this is what is required to operate. These Shaktis are real. They are not illusory. They are not nirvachaniya. And they are real only as long as avidya operates. This is a slight difference here, right? So when avidya is gone, we'll see that the Shaktis are not really there. It is just Brahman which is. But as long as we are in the realm of avidya, these are called as real. So in one sense, what you have is Advaita Vedanta tends to be a negative portrayal. What do we mean by negative? It says that, think of this, but it's really an illusion. Remove that, nasti, and so on and so forth, right? The emphasis is on ignoring it, right? Whereas Vyakarana is about daily operation. Therefore, it kind of says, no, this is real. Ultimately, the position is not different, right? But the way it is presented is different. In Vedanta sadhana, we say that, look, as long as you think that your wife, your child, your wealth, your home, whatever is there, you will never go towards Brahman. Therefore, every text, every Prakarana Grantha says this is not real, this is not real, this is only apparent, know that, etc. Whereas emphasis in Vyakarana is that all these are real, and they simply say this is real because avidya is operating. The moment avidya is removed, all this will not be there. Right? And very critically, Kala Shakti is described as the creator. Right? Think of a puppet master. It is said in Kala Samudesha that when the threads are released, we exist. And when this thread is pulled up with the puppet master, we cease to exist. Right? This puppet master, or it is also another simile used for that. That is what is Kala Shakti. And it is in fact described as independent almost. It can work independently. So to a large extent, many scholars have compared Kala Shakti of Vyakarana with Maya of Advaita Vedanta. But this is treated as a Swatantra Shakti here. It's almost as if Kala operates on its own. And Kala Shakti is the key explanation of the manifest differences we see both in time and space in this apparent world. But all these are really the Shaktis of Brahman. And there's not just one Shakti, there are multiple Shaktis, and different Shaktis are intended by us when we speak in different sentences. Right? So, along with Brahman, these are the other Shaktis. And these Shaktis are what cause the apparent manifestation of this Jagat. When Bhartrhari uses the word vivarta, he does not really differentiate it from parinama. But in Advaita, there is a big differentiation between vivarta and parinama. Right? So when milk turns into yogurt or curds, it is called as vivarta. Right? It is called as parinama. And when we talk about clay getting into a pot, it is called as vivarta. In the sense that the nature does not change in vivarta, whereas it changes in parinama. Okay? So an apparent change is what is vivarta. That means the end effect, the karya, right, continues to be the same as karana, but yet also different. That is what we see in vivarta. Right? So though Bhartrhari uses the word vivarta, and the same karika uses the word parinama, the differentiation between vivarta and parinama is really a later differentiation in philosophy. But we continue to use the word vivarta because in light of the later differentiation, vivarta is what really Bhartrhari means. Right? So this Jagat is the vivarta of Shabda, which is always equal to Brahman. And Shabda is the source of this. And Shabda is what remains at the end. I've purposefully kind of collapsed this because we'll see this in more detail or discuss this in more detail in the later sessions. But from Brahman to Jagat is this process, and Kala Shakti is the key part which ensures that all this manifestation happens. Okay. Since we discussed about Brahman, there is no better upasamhara than talking about the very first karika again, which is Anadi Nidanam Brahma Shabda Tattvam Yadaksharam Vivartate Artha Bhavena Prakriya Jagato Itaha. With that, we can open the floor for questions. Nitin Mohodaya, please unmute the participants.
Sivasenani, participants won't be asking the questions directly. I will read out the questions to you and you can answer.
Okay. Yeah, I opened the...
Yes. So I can read it out and then you can answer.
Mr. Sunil Kumar has a question. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so have you answered the Subhash Yadav's question? Shabda Brahman is same.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Sunil Kumarji's question is that does Vyakarana differ according to Darshana, Advaita, Vishishta Advaita or yoga, I mean the understanding of Vyakarana.
Okay, this is a very interesting question. There is a great scholar called Ashok Aklujkar, and he wrote a paper called Word is the World. Word is an Shabda. Right? Then he says, he cites people who think that what Bhartrhari says, Bhartrhari's philosophy is like Visishtadvaita. Some people said it is like Dvaita, right? Yet others maybe yoga, as Mr. Sunil Kumar is seeing. Actually, if you look at what Bhartrhari himself says, he is very cognizant of the fact that Vyakarana is a tool used by all Shastras, including Nastikas, including Bauddhas, including Hetuvadins, right? Therefore, Vyakarana does not ever take a very strong stance. It is always accommodating. Right? We just said, right? An Anga is different from the Angi. Yes, it is different. Anga is same as Angi. Yes, it is the same. How can both exist? Because of Vivaksha. Vivaksha means Vaktum Ichha. Whatever is the speaker's intent, as per that, Artha needs to be decided. In fact, this position is acceptable to Nyaya as well. That there is a famous example called Navakambalam. Navakambalam can mean a group of 9 blankets or a new blanket. Right? What is the meaning? Nyaya says, okay, don't fret about it. Go and ask the speaker. Sir, what do you mean by Navakambalam? Whatever you mean, that is the meaning. When speaker is not there, we talk about it. But essentially, Vyakarana lives with plurality. In every concept of Jati, Artha, Bhartrhari goes to great length to explain each concept as per different Shastras. So, Vyakarana is understood differently by different, Shastravits, because it allows that particular leeway. But Vyakarana has a distinct position apart from all these Shastras, yet it has enough flexibility to operate and be integral and be whole, even in the hands of somebody whose philosophy differs. I hope Mr. Sunil got the answer.
Another question that we have is that what is the purport that Sphotavadin gives to the shloka of Kalidasa, Vagartha Iva Samskrita? You know the shloka.
Great question.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I wrote a paper called The Philosophy of Kalidasa, highlighting this very point. If you look at the shloka, Vagartha Iva Samprukta, right? At the beginning of Raghuvamsham, Kalidasa is praying to Parvati Parameshwara. And how is he describing them? Vak Artha Iva, Vak Arthau Iva Samprukta. Okay? That they are always together, like Vak and Artha. Right? And remember, Kalidasa was a great scholar of all these Shastras. So it means that only a Vyakarana, a Vedanti, or a Mimamsaka can even ever say that Parvati Parameshwara or Vakartha Samputta. Any other Darshana cannot even say that. Because if you are a Nayayika, right, you have to struggle to explain this. In Nyaya, Ishvara, Shiva is given a great position. Shiva is the ultimate. And how can Shiva and Parvati be always together like Shabda and Artha? They have to give a lower meaning there because there was a time when they were different. Somebody came and made a connection between them. Are we saying that somebody came and made a connection between Shiva and Parvati? So we say that the question should not be what is the purport that Sphotavadin gives, that this is tenable only if you accept Sphotavada. Of course, it's also tenable if you accept Varnavada, as Mimamsaka also explained the same thing. Essentially, both Vak and Artha need to be completely what you call eternal and without any creator having for them, for this shloka to be meaningful. As to what is the purport given by it, Kalidasa is a great poet. He knows exactly the meaning of Vak and Artha being always together. He is referring to Parvati Parameshwara as the eternal Brahman. Remember, Shabda and Artha are not different from each other and they are both Brahman. Therefore, we say that Vyakarana's, that Kalidasa is bound to Brahman in the very first shloka. Okay, I think I forgot this mantra in the moment, and Mr. Devi Prasad Sharma gave the mantra. You are right, sir. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha from Taittiriya Upanishad. You're right. Right? If you're the same.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So I had one question, Sivasenani.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned about Jati within Jati
Yes.
in the context of how Brahman is taken as a substratum. So the Vedantic position is Brahman is the Adhisthana of the Jagat or the ultimate reality, transcendental reality. So how does that come into play in the notion of Jati within Jati? Can you just explain? For clarification.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
So Jati is called universals in philosophy, in in English in philosophical circles, right? Whereas in Vaiseshika, in Nyaya, etc., Jati is the class, the essence. So when we talk about Vrikshatva Jati or Gotva Jati, right? So for example, when we say what is the definition of a cow, right? We say cow has only horns, then there's a problem because other animals also have horns. So cow has something called Gangadoru, we say in Telugu. Okay, so that is something like underneath your neck, right? One particular unique thing of cow is there. So whatever has that is called is cow is what a Nayayika would say. But ultimately, you can start defining a jati, right? Though it is not always possible, you can define jati without avyapti or ativyapti. Once you define it, what it really means is that anything which fits the definition can be called that cow. Anything which does not fit the definition cannot be called that.
Okay.
In other words, all of the elements of cow, all the atoms of cow, okay, together represent that jati. All the cows represent that jati. All the cows together are that jati, right? Now, it is possible for an individual to be extinct. One cow can die, but this cow jati will never die. Somebody will come and ask a question: what happens if all the lions in Gir forest are dead? Is the Asiatic lion dead? The universal called Asiatic lion will live. It cannot perish. So once you look at the jati, right, that jati will have no end. It is eternal. That jati will have no change. That jati will have nothing within that. Because it is that ultimate entity. You cannot say that a jati is made up of something else. The moment you say that, then what happens is that Nayayika will say that anavastha dosha will come. Anavastha dosha means that, okay, let us say that what permeates cow is called cowness, the Gotva Jati. You say that no, Gotva Jati has something else called the Sattva Jati of existence. Existence itself has some other Jati and so on. Where will you end? There will be Anavastha, right? So this dosha, to remove that, they only posit one entity below an individual. That entity is called Jati, and by definition, it cannot have further analysis. It cannot have an adhisthana. And because they accept a pluralistic world, it sits nicely with there being one Ishvara, with there being many jivas and many jatis, each of the jati being eternal. Now, this stance of Nyaya and Vaisheshika is not acceptable, or even Mimamsa is not acceptable to Vedanta and Vyakarana. Why? If no two jatis are same, if these jatis are eternal and there are many, then what is the point of we saying that there are no two entities? So we simply say, sorry sir, we also don't have any anavastha dosha. Instead of one, we propose two substrates. At the level of Vyavahara, we accept Jati. We understand when you say Vrikshatva Jati, Gotva Jati. You and I can talk, we'll not have any disturbance or we'll not have any breakdown of communication. But we differ from you in saying that both the Vrikshatva Jati and the Gotva Jati have the same Adhisthana, have the same substratum, which is what we call as Brahman. And only then is all this world in consonance is what the Veda teaches. It says that Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. If Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma is being stated so clearly by Veda, how can you say that both Jati is different from Mukshatva Jati and that they're separate and they're eternal? No, we cannot accept that because of this reason. That is how the position that na jatau jatihi is not accepted. It's an axiom kind of thing in these realistic schools. Whereas it is accepted only at a certain level in the idealistic schools.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Sivasenani, for such a elaborate and crisp clarification. I think we are almost coming to the closure of morning session, and I don't see any more questions also. So viewers, if you have any questions, we can take forward in the second session. Don't forget to log in at 5 p.m. For the second session, and Sivasenani will be with us till tomorrow evening. So reflect upon the talk, and you can ask questions anytime during those sessions as well. So with this, again, thank you, Sivasenani, on the behalf of Indica Moksha and all our viewers for doing this very important session, because most of us have this notion that Vyakarana means grammar. We don't really know that there is a philosophy of grammar. So, this series of talks are very important in providing that background, that introduction to Sphotavada. Thank you again, sir, for doing this.
Sir, I have one request to the participants. If you think that it is too slow, too fast, too deep, too shallow, if you leave comments, I'll try to adjust it accordingly. Because initially it was not known as to what is a group of audience we'll have. So if you can leave that in the chat, I'll try to read that and adjust the content accordingly in the next 6 parts. Thank you. We'll meet again at evening 5 p.m.
Yes. Thank you, Sivasenani. Viewers, with this, we conclude this session. Don't miss to log into the evening session. Shri Guru Pyo Namah.